Welcome, everyone. This evening's class, we are going to be continuing where we left off last week. But of course, like every class, even if you missed last week, it's fine on its own. Today, we are going to be discussing the morning blessings. And the morning blessings have a wide variety of topics that we thank God for every morning. So I have a Siddur here, and I'm going to show you where you can find them. And if anyone on Zoom, you can either see in the Siddur over here, but the Siddur that I'm using is this blue one. It's the Chabad Siddur with the English or whatever other language you have on it. And if you look over here, we start off here, we have the Modani over here, we have the Netilat Yadayim, the blessing for the washing the hands. We have Asher Yatzar, and we have Elokai, the blessings and the prayer that we discussed last week. And when we get to the end of Elokai, we start with a bunch of blessings. And if you notice, it looks like just a list. It's a list of blessings. It starts on this page, and then it continues over here all the way till here. And we're going to go through them. But before we go through each one and discuss the individual blessings that we're thanking God for as we begin our day, it's important to understand the idea of what a blessing is. Now, we spoke about a blessing last week, and we spoke about the different types of blessings that we have. And these blessings are a little different than the standard blessings that we have, because it's not a blessing for a mitzvah, and it's not a blessing for food. It's actually a blessing where we're thanking Hashem for an experience. We're thanking Hashem for an experience that we have been blessed with in our life. And most blessings, we know what the experience is before we say the blessing. For example, when we say the blessing of Al Netilat Yadayim, you know which mitzvah you're about to do, or that you just did. You know that you washed your hands. When we light Shabbat candles, you know you just lit the candles. So even if you're not being thoughtful necessarily about the blessing, the words of the blessing, you can be thoughtful about the experience and put meaning to what you're actually doing. Or if you're eating a slice of pizza, and you're saying the blessing for the pizza, even if you don't necessarily know the translation of every word in the blessing, in your mind, you're thanking Hashem for this food because you're eating it, right? But in the morning blessings, we have a list of blessings that we're thanking Hashem for, but we actually need to know what these blessings mean in order to be aware of the experience that we're thanking God for, because they're all blessings that we could so easily take for granted. So when we say these blessings, it's actually not just stuff that we're going to have during our day, but they're actually moments for us to pause and be grateful for something that we might otherwise not even realize is something we should be grateful for. And that is something extremely powerful, because the blessings are directed to God. We're speaking to Hashem when we're thanking Him for these blessings, but they're actually what we should be telling ourselves. The experience that we should be reminding ourselves that it is happening. I remember before I got married, and this is completely off topic, but the idea is the same, and it's also a beautiful idea to keep in mind. I remember when I was doing what we call Kala classes, I was learning about the laws of Torah Mishpacha with a teacher who was teaching me about the laws of marriage, and she was, teaching me the general laws of marriage, the laws of Nida, and as well, just, important ideas for building a Jewish home. And she shared with me a beautiful thing. And by the way, if anyone's in the situation that they are learning, it's a beautiful thing to do before marriage or even after, if somebody's married and wants to learn the laws of Tarat HaMishpacha. She was telling me about when she goes to the mikvah. And there's a part of the preparation for the mikvah where the woman takes a bath and she cleans her body, because when a woman immerses in the mikvah, she's already completely clean. And this teacher was telling me that when she's in the bath and she's washing her body, she takes the time, as she washes each part of her body, she takes a moment to appreciate what this part of her body does for her. And she said it's a beautiful time for her because she had a chance to thank Hashem. She's like, how often do I thank Hashem for my toes? Or do I thank Hashem for my fingernails? Or do I thank Hashem for my shoulders? Or whatever it is. She's like, I use that opportunity to thank Hashem for something that I might otherwise take for granted. And that idea stuck with me, and it's something that I definitely apply and use when I go to the mikvah as well personally. But in general, this idea of finding opportunities to thank Hashem for things that we would otherwise take for granted is a really important part to bring into our day. So with that in mind, we're going to begin learning about each one of these blessings. And each one of these blessings are something that we're thanking Hashem for, an experience that we are blessed to have, that we can often take for granted, although depending on our situation in life, sometimes we appreciate these things more than others, but that also are reminders for each one of us, we should constantly be grateful for the fact that we have them in our lives. So we start off with the first blessing, and each blessing starts off the same. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. And the first blessing is, Hanoten lasechvi vina lahafchen ben yom uben laila, which literally means, blessed are you, Hashem, all of that, right? Who gives the rooster understanding to distinguish between day and night. Now, on surface level, we're thanking God for the fact that we were able to wake up this morning. And in the olden days, what was the call of the wake up, right? Before alarm clocks, there was a rooster, and the rooster was able to tell the difference between day and night. And when day would break, the rooster would sound its call and wake everybody up. And by the way, let me tell you, I remember as a kid learning about this and thinking like this happens nowhere. Like whoever saw a rooster? And I spent a year in Ukraine. Oh, there we go. I spent a year in Ukraine, and the next door neighbor to where we lived was on a farm, like full on, like with an outhouse and a rooster. And every morning I was woken up to the sound of a rooster. And it reminded me of this blessing every morning. I didn't always appreciate it. It was way too early. But the idea is that the rooster can distinguish between day and night. Well, when the rooster sounds its call, it has seen daybreak. A rooster in its natural habitat will do that. A trained rooster, I can't vouch for, but a rooster in its natural habitat will sound its call when it wakes up in the morning. What are we actually thanking Hashem for? What is this very specific wording for the fact that the rooster distinguishes between day and night? We're thanking Hashem for a wake-up call, okay. But actually, there's a much deeper meaning. If a rooster can distinguish between day and night, a rooster with minimal intellect can distinguish between day and night. Day and night actually represents good and bad, darkness and light. If a rooster is given the capability of distinguishing between day and night, how much more so each one of us is able to distinguish between good and bad. And we're actually thanking Hashem for the ability to make good choices. Now, that's something that we take for granted because we have so many choices in our day. So many times in our day where we have to decide, is this the right thing to do or is this the wrong thing to do? Is this a good decision or a poor decision? Is this a smart choice or a choice I might regret? And we are so lucky that we have the wisdom to be able to make good choices. And we recognize that Hashem is the one who has implanted within us the ability to distinguish between good and bad. And when we recognize that the ability to make a choice is actually a blessing, then we want to use that opportunity to make good choices. The reason why we are able to make choices is because we have a piece of divinity inside us. We are not ruled only by an animalistic soul. We have within us a Yetzer Tov and a Yetzer Hara. We have a godly soul and we have an animalistic soul. The animalistic soul wants us to do selfish things. There's always that inner part of us that wants to do selfish things. And that's an important part of us because that's the part of us that makes sure we eat and we sleep and we do all the basic things that we need to live. But if we are only ruled by our animalistic soul, then we run on instinct, and that's not healthy. But because we have a divine soul, we're able to make good and smart and spiritual choices, even if they're hard for us, even if they require more effort than we really want to put in. So we're starting off and we're thanking Hashem for the ability to distinguish between good and bad and ultimately be able to make good choices. Because those choices are what make us better people. Those choices are what connect us with each other. Those choices are what bring us closer to God. And we're starting off our day with this blessing. So the blessing of Hanoten Lasach Vivina is actually, we are each that rooster. We have that inner soul, and we're thanking Hashem for the ability to make good choices. Yes.
Now, I know Hebrew, so where you spend practice every day. So what are the words translated?
So Hanoten Lasachvi, who gives to the rooster, Bina, wisdom or understanding, Lehafchin, to distinguish, to differentiate, Ben Yom, between the day, Uvein Laila, and between the night. Now, the next blessing is one that I personally do not take for granted, simply because the minute these come off, I can't see any of you, really. And I know you're all there. The blessing that we say is Pokeach Ivrim, who opens the eyes of the blind. Now, anyone who opens their eyes and cannot see anything can understand the feeling of opening the eyes of the blind. And anyone who has trouble with their eyesight or any form of difficulty with their eye doesn't take that for granted. But we're thanking God for the ability to see. Now, that is something we can easily take for granted. And physically, we're so lucky that we have vision. But on a deeper level, we're also thanking Hashem for insight. There is the difference between sight and insight. Insight is the ability to see beyond what is superficial, to see deeper, to have more of a spiritual insight, to have a more emotional insight into the world around us. And when we thank Hashem for opening the eyes of the blind, we're not saying, God, I would be blind without my eyes, even though that's true. We would be blind if God didn't allow us to open up our eyes in the morning. But not just that, for giving us the ability to see people, to understand situations, to see things from a deeper perspective. And that is something that we can easily forget, that when we meet people and we encounter any type of person, we should interact with people not only on surface level, but use that vision, that insight that Hashem has given us to see past the surface, see what's really behind this person, especially when we're dealing with a person who has maybe a more challenging way of communicating or a more challenging personality or is behaving in a way that is more difficult. That's when we need to use that deeper insight and see what's really going on. How can I understand this person and be there for this person? That requires a deeper level of seeing someone, seeing who they really are, seeing what's really going on. And that's something that we thank Hashem that we have the ability to do. And it's also a reminder for us every morning to use that vision, that deeper level of seeing and understanding. So that's the idea of Pokeach Ivrim. Which brings us now to number 3. Baruch atah Hashem, ... The next blessing we have is Matir Asurim. Matir Asurim means who releases the people who are in chains, the bound, anyone who is bound in chains. And on a surface level, when we're sleeping, we're bound by sleep, which means we have no control of our movements to a certain extent when we're sleeping. And when we wake up, we're released from that. Now we are in control. When someone is bound, they're imprisoned, so to speak, they're not in control of their body. They're not in control of their movements, which happens during sleep. But on a deeper level, we also have this idea of being bound. Thank God, none of us are being held captive, in chains. But we all have those things that hold us hostage. Usually, it's our biggest temptations. The things that we feel like we cannot let go of. Whether it's, for some people, their cell phone, or a bad habit, or smoking, or drinking, or any other, and even if it's not an extreme addiction that would be, labeled an addiction that needs treatment, we all have those things that we keep going back to and we just can't get rid of. Negative habits, things that we waste our time on, things like that. And we start our day and we're thanking Hashem for releasing us from those temptations. Now it's interesting because we're all saying the blessing, thank you Hashem for releasing us from our bondage, but we might still be bound. We might still be held captive by those temptations. But when we say the blessing, we're actually reminding ourselves that Hashem gives us the power to release ourselves. Hashem gives us the power to make different choices. And if today is a new day, which it is every day, today is a new opportunity to change our habits. Now, that doesn't mean it's easy. And that doesn't mean we can necessarily do it alone. But it means that within us, the ability to take the first step towards becoming free. Depending on what it is that holds us hostage, is what kind of changes have to be made in order to get us there. So if somebody needs to reach out to another person for support, you have the ability, we each have the power to make that phone call. If it's putting away or getting rid of that negative influence that's in your home, in your life, or whatever it is, we have the ability to make those changes. And when we start off our day and we thank Hashem for that ability, it's a reminder to ourselves, let me take that first step today to becoming more free. We don't even have to admit what those things are. We each know what those things are for ourselves. But every day, if we take one step towards becoming more free, that allows ourselves to release those chains that hold us captive, which brings us to the next blessing. The next blessing is Zokef Kefufim, which literally means who straightens out those that are bent over or those that are bowed. Now, on a surface level, that's what happens in the morning. You're laying down, you're curled up, you're bent over. The fact that you're able to stand up straight is a blessing. And for anyone who has a hard time getting out of bed or getting off a couch, it's a blessing to be able to stand up straight. I remember, when I was growing up, and I know this, many different people in many situations. I remember in my grandfather's house, there was my favorite couch. It was the most comfortable couch. It was like an armchair type of couch. And I loved sitting in it. And my grandfather never sat in it. And I remember once asking him, how come you never sit in this? He's like, because when I sit in it, I can't get back up. It was a very soft couch. And it was hard for him to get back up. And many people have this at many ages. We had this discussion. So the fact that we're able to stand up straight after sleeping is a blessing. And the fact that God gives us the ability to straighten out our bodies is a beautiful blessing. But on a deeper level, this also refers to something even more profound. And that is when we are bent over, when we are bowed under a burden of stress, of challenge, of difficulty, we thank Hashem that we have the ability and the resources to straighten ourselves up. You know, when somebody is sitting like this versus somebody who's sitting like this, what's the difference? Someone who's sitting like this is stressed out, is tense, is stressed. They're busy, they're active, they're bent over, right? Someone who's sitting like this is relaxed, doesn't have a care in the world. Someone who walks straight. They're not bogged down and bent over because of stress. We all have stress. Now, that could be literally or figuratively. We all have stress in our lives, but we thank Hashem. And this blessing is also a Hashem should give us the strength to be able to overcome our challenges that are holding us down. And that we should be able to overcome the stress and release the pressure that is bringing us down. And that is a really beautiful way to start off our day, because there are so many stressful things that happen every day in our lives. And the more busy and meaningful our lives get, the more stress that comes along with it. I was actually having a conversation with a parent of one of my students, and she was telling me, her behavior issues, it's hard for her to do certain things. She's like, yeah, fifth grade is just very, very stressful for her. And I told the parent, I said, I hear you, and I really think it's a good idea that we should help her learn, coping mechanisms for her strength. And I looked at her and I said, because, life gets a lot more stressful than fifth grade. Let's be real. As life gets busier and life has more joy and life has more purpose, there's also a lot more stress that comes along with it. And that's a beautiful part of life. But we're thanking Hashem, able to release ourselves from the pressure and not let the pressure bring us down. The other thing that you think of when you think of a person who's standing up straight is a person who is proud, right? A person who is really bent over, as if they're hiding, they're ashamed, they're embarrassed, they're shy, versus someone who is standing up straight with pride, with confidence. We thank Hashem that we have confidence. There is something that is called Gaon Yaakov. Gaon Yaakov means Jewish pride. And it is something that is within each one of us as Jewish people. We have pride in our Judaism. And we thank Hashem that we have so much to be proud of. We thank Hashem that we are part of a nation that we can stand straight and tall and proud. And if we ever feel like we are, God forbid, ashamed or embarrassed or feel like we have to hide, let's remember this blessing. The blessing of Zokef Kefufim, who straightens out those that are bent over. We should be proud of who we are. And we thank Hashem that we are able to stand strong and proud because we have so much beauty to be proud of. And this is the blessing of Zokef Kefufim, which now we have the next blessing, which is Malbish Arumim. Literally, it means who dresses the undressed, or who clothes the unclothed. And on a surface level, we wake up in the morning, no matter what you sleep in, you need to get dressed in the morning. And we're thanking Hashem that we have clothes to wear. But Chassidut actually takes it a step further, and it's so beautiful. And I want to share it with you. Just like our body needs clothing, and we clothe our bodies, our soul also has clothing. What is the clothing of the soul? Tanya refers to the clothing of the soul as the livushim. The livushim, the clothing of the soul, are our thoughts, speech, and action. And the way we think dresses our soul. The way we speak dresses our soul. And the way we behave dresses our soul. Our soul is pure and holy. But the way we think, speak, and behave dresses our soul and covers it in the clothing that our soul then wears. So when we're thanking Hashem for our clothing, we're thanking Hashem for the beautiful clothing in our closet, whether they are just a bunch of plain old shmatis, exactly, or a bunch of uniform skirts, or the top designer brands, or anything and everything in between. Whether you have 3 outfits that you wear every day, or you have closets and closets and closets. We're thanking Hashem for the fact that we have clothes. But we're also thanking Hashem that our soul has clothing, that we can control our thoughts, our speech, and our actions, and that we can dress our soul in beautiful clothing. So when we say the blessing of Malbish Arumim, we're thanking Hashem for the fact that we have souls that are clothed. It's also a reminder and a thank you to Hashem for the mitzvah of modesty, specifically for women. When we think about clothing, clothing plays a very big part in Judaism. Just like when you walk down the street and you see a police officer, you can immediately identify that this is a police officer by his uniform. The same is with a firefighter and the post office worker and every other job that has a uniform, right? The doctor, whatever it is, when you see a person in uniform, they are immediately identifiable by who they are. And interestingly, most people in uniform have the types of professions that are all encompassing, meaning that no matter what the situation is, they are dedicated to their job. Police officer, a firefighter, a nurse, they're there completely with their whole essence. And that is personified by their uniform. Now, their uniform is not what makes them a doctor. Listen, you put on a costume, it doesn't make you a doctor. That's the difference between a costume and a uniform. A costume is something that you wear in order to look like someone. A uniform is what somebody wears to represent who they are. Jewish people have uniform. It's not a costume, it's a uniform. And the reason we wear this uniform is because we want our outward expression to represent who we are. And that uniform is different for male and female. Men wear a Jewish uniform of a kippah and tzitzit. Women wear modest clothing, and that is our uniform. Now, the reasons for that we're not going to get into right now, which we can and definitely should discuss at a later date. There are reasons for wearing a kippah and tzitzit. There are reasons for wearing modest clothing. And there are reasons why men do this and women do that, because it represents who we are on the inside. But when we're thanking Hashem for the clothing, specifically as women, for modest clothing, we're thanking Hashem for the mitzvah of modesty. Because modesty, tzniut, is a mitzvah that can be looked at as a burden, or it can be looked at as the most beautiful present from Hashem. There are many rules and do's and don'ts and what's allowed and what's not allowed. And yes, when I walk into a mall, which I hate shopping, so I never do, but when I go online or whatever type of shopping, there are many beautiful items of clothing that I cannot buy because they do not fit the criteria of tzniut clothing. It's true. And I very easily can look at that as I scroll through the H&M app and see all the cute pants and tops and crop tops and whatever it is. And I can very easily think, oh, it's so hard to dress modestly. It's very easy to do that if you look at it with that mindset. But if we look at the idea of modesty as a gift that God has given us, as a way for us to respect and honor our bodies, and respect and honor our souls and ourselves, and send the image and the message to the world that, look at me, not at my body. Because the minute somebody is wearing clothing that is revealing, all people notice is the skin that's showing. That's just fact. Whatever you're revealing, that's all people see. Don't look at my body. I'm not my body. Jewish law of modesty requires that our face not be covered, and we don't cover our hands. Why? You would think the more covered up, the better. No, burqas are not a part of Judaism, because it's not a matter of being covered up so that we're invisible. It's a matter of covering up in a beautiful way, but that our face, which is a window to our soul, and our emotions and our personality is reflected on our face, and our hands, which represent our actions and what we do with our lives, that's what we want people to recognize us for. My body is great, but it's for me. It's not for the world. It's for whoever I choose to share it with. But my face, my smile, my thoughts, my character, that's what I want you to get to know about me. That's what I'm really worth. My actions, that's really what it's worth noticing. And when we thank Hashem for clothing us, for the fact that we have the mitzvah of modesty, it reminds us to appreciate this mitzvah that we have, especially since we recite these blessings right after we get dressed in the morning. And we thank Hashem for this mitzvah, which is such a beautiful and powerful mitzvah. That is Malbish Arumin, which brings us now to the next one. A beautiful, beautiful blessing, Hanoten Layaef Koach. Very simple, very basic, who gives tired people koach, strength. Wake up in the morning, sometimes we have strength, and sometimes we're so tired. At the end of the day, we're tired, right? You ever met a woman who wasn't tired? You ever met an adult who wasn't tired? I haven't. I certainly haven't been not tired in a while, right? We always need strength. And when we recognize that our strength, our koach, comes from Hashem, it gives us that extra push. So we're thanking Hashem simply for giving us strength to get through the day and to be able to do everything we need to do. The next blessing that we have is Roka Haaretz al Hamayim. Roka Haaretz al Hamayim literally means who spreads forth the earth above the waters. We have the waters, the whole world is covered in water, and God has put earth above the water, right? Because under the earth, there's water. We're thanking Hashem for the fact that we live on dry land, that we are not drowning, And on a basic level, especially, given the storms that we have outside, God bless Nicole and keep her far away from us. And, the hurricanes that just very recently really shattered the lives of so many people. We thank Hashem for the fact that we live on dry land. And on a deeper level, dry land represents stability, security, whereas the water represents turbulence and drowning. We thank Hashem for the stability in our lives. We thank Hashem for the structure and the security that we have in our lives, that we live on dry land, and that we are not, God forbid, drowning physically, emotionally, whatever it is. And it reminds us to look out for those areas of stability in our lives and continue to strengthen them to keep them strong. The next blessing that we have, Hamechin mitzadei gaver, who directs the steps of mankind, which literally means that we have the ability to walk and that God directs our steps. But on a deeper level, we can understand this to mean something else as well. Wherever we go, wherever we step, whatever direction we take in our day, it is directed by Hashem. Every single thing that happens in our day, every single thing that happens in our life is part of a plan that Hashem has set out for us. It is directed by God. And whenever we find ourselves in a situation like, how did I get here? What am I doing here? That's when we remind ourselves, Hamechin mitzadei gaver. Hashem is the one who directs our steps. So how did I get here? Because Hashem brought me here. And if Hashem brought me here, then number one, there's a reason why I'm here. And number two, Hashem will help me get out of here as well. So whenever we are going somewhere, taking a direction physically or even just anywhere, a path in our lives, let's remember that Hashem is the one who directs our steps. There was once a group of women, shluchot, Chabad Rebbetzins, who were on their way back from a convention. And this was going back, I don't know, maybe 50 years or so. They were on their way back from a convention, and there was a major snowstorm, and they were stranded in an airport in, I believe it was Detroit. And it was Friday. They didn't have a connecting flight that would get them home before Shabbat. And this was way before the age of, cell phones and WhatsApp. And they needed to get a hold of someone somehow. And one of the women who was, leading the group, she had the chance to make the first phone call, and they had a payphone. And her first call was to 770 Eastern Parkway. And she called the Rebbe's office. There are a group of Chabad Rebbetzins. We need help. We need to know where to go. We need to know what to do. We're stuck. So she called the Rebbe's office, and she's feeding quarters into the payphone, and she calls the Rebbe's office, and the Rebbe's secretary answers the phone, and she identifies herself, and she says, we're the group, we're coming from the convention, and please tell the Rebbe we're stuck. So the secretary, relays the message to the Rebbe, and he comes back on the phone, and he says, the Rebbe wants to know, was means stuck? What does stuck mean? So she starts explaining, we're this, and he stops her and he says, no, the Rebbe knows English. He's not asking what does the word stuck mean. He's asking, what does it mean you're stuck? And all of a sudden, their minds shifted. They said, we're not stuck. We're here because we're meant to be here. So automatically, instead of this panicked frenzy of how are we going to get out of here, we're stuck, they put themselves into motion. We're here because we're supposed to be here. So what are we going to do here? So they got in touch with the Jewish community, the local Jewish community. They found where to stay for Shabbat, and they had a beautiful Shabbat. But this idea was a message that the Rebbe was giving more than just to these women. It's a message to all of us. When we're in a situation where we feel like we're stuck, what does it mean you're stuck? If you're here, it's because there's a purpose for you to be here. And there's something that you need to do here. And there's a way out. If it's somewhere that you need to stay, then you're here to stay for a purpose. And if it's somewhere that you can stay, then you're not stuck. There's a way out, because Hamechen mitzadei gavar, Hashem is the one who directs the steps of each one of us. And when we start our day, we want to start our day with that message. And moving on now, we'll let you in, even though it's a ladies' class, but we'll let you in. The next mitzvah we have is the blessing of, she'asa li kol tzarki, which literally means who has provided me with my every need, that Hashem has provided me with all of my needs. Now, our sages tell us that this blessing specifically refers to shoes. The fact that we have shoes. And how do we know this to be true? Because on Yom Kippur and on Tisha B'Av, when we do not wear leather shoes, we omit this blessing. We do not say the blessing of She'asa li kol tzarki on Yom Kippur and on Tisha B'Av because we do not have leather shoes. In the times when the blessings were written, the only type of sturdy shoe was made out of leather. Nowadays, I mean, who wears leather? That's insulting to the animals, right? I mean, everyone can make their own choices, but, vegan leather. But we're discussing over here the idea of shoes. I'm being very politically correct about this, and I'm not going to say anything else. Now, everyone can make their own choices with regards to leather. What is the idea of shoes? Why do shoes represent all of our needs? It protects us. And let me share with you an experience that I had, okay? I love walking barefoot. I love the feeling of walking barefoot. The minute I get home, I take off my shoes. Not because the floors need to be clean. I just like walking barefoot. And I've been walking barefoot for years. And recently, in the last couple of years, I noticed, and unfortunately, back pain is my constant companion, but I noticed that I feel like an old lady at some point. My hips are hurting me, my knees are hurting me, everything hurts when I'm cooking. I'm standing in my kitchen, I'm cooking, and everything hurts. I'm like, come on, why is everything hurting? I remember having a conversation with my mother about this, and she's like, well, do you wear good sneakers in the kitchen? I'm like, no, Ma, I don't wear sneakers. I like being barefoot. She's like, you need good shoes. Good shoes are supportive, and your entire body feels the support of good shoes. And I have to tell you, I rarely walk barefoot because I feel the difference. When you're wearing supportive shoes, it literally supports your entire body from the bottom up. So why is it that when we say She'asa li kol tzarki, who has provided me with my every need, we're referring to shoes? Because our entire body is supported by our shoes. So when we're thanking Hashem for our blessings, we're thanking Hashem for the fact that Hashem provides us with support that is sometimes invisible, but it's actually supporting everything. Like, okay, maybe depending on how much you spend on your shoes, but people don't always notice shoes right away. Okay, if there's, a red bottom under the shoe with a spiky heel, those everybody notice, right? But like shoes is like something so small compared to everything else in your body. It's like your feet, really? It's like the lowest part of your body. But the support affects everything. And we're thanking Hashem for the smallest areas of support that really affect us entirely. And that's what we're saying when we say She'asa li kol tzarki. The next blessings that we move on now into are a series of blessings that are thanking God for our identity. And I will preface it by saying that it's important to understand these blessings, because if we don't understand these blessings, they're very, very easy to misunderstand and to really have questions about. So the next blessing that we have is Ozer Yisrael Bigvura, who girds the people of Israel, who belts the people of Israel with might. What is the idea? The strength that Hashem gives us is like a warrior that's fastening his belt. What does a warrior carry on his belt? His weapon. What is the weapon that gives us as Jewish people strength? The Torah. The Torah is our strength. So we're thanking Hashem for the Torah. We're thanking Hashem for giving us a weapon, the strength that gives us power, that gives us koach. The next blessing that we have is Oter Yisrael B'tif'ara, who crowns the nation of Israel with glory, with beauty. What is the crown of the Jewish people? What is the crown? Well, a crown is worn on our head. So on a basic level, we thank Hashem. Men are thanking Hashem for the mitzvah of wearing a kippah. But really, we're thanking Hashem for the crown that we have on our head, which is our intellect, our brains, the beauty of each one of us as a part of the Jewish nation is our mind, our ability to think, and the fact that we can use our minds to serve Hashem. Now, talking about the kippah for a moment, why don't women wear a kippah? Okay, I'm going to stop you there and say that that's 100% wrong, and I'll tell you why. Because men wear a kippah starting at age of 3. So if the equivalent of a kippah was hair coverings, then 3-year-old girls should be covering their hair also. So that's where I'm correcting that. But it's a good point. The reason why a married woman covers her hair has nothing to do with a kippah. Because a kippah is for all ages of boys starting at the age of 3. Why don't women wear a kippah? Well, let's first ask, why do men wear a kippah? Why do men wear a kippah? To remind the man that there is a godly presence above him. A man needs a physical object on his head to remind him of God's presence. Why doesn't a woman wear a kippah? Simply because women were created by God with a higher spiritual level that we are always aware of God's presence. So we don't need a physical reminder. In fact, it would be insulting to a woman to tell her that she needs to wear a kippah because she doesn't need the reminder. It's like putting an alarm on your phone to wake you up when you're already awake. If you need it, it's the most useful thing in the world. If you don't need it, it's just annoying, right? So the reason why women don't wear a kippah is because we have a spiritual sense that God has given us that we don't need something physical on our head to remind us of God's presence. But this crown of glory that we're thanking Hashem for, whether it's for men with a kippah and for women, that inner spiritual sense within us, we're thanking Hashem for the fact that the divine presence accompanies us, that we have a spiritual dimension that surrounds us in our lives. And that is the beauty and that is the glory of Bnei Israel. And we are so lucky that we have that. And that's what we're thanking Hashem for. And then we move on to a blessing, which, remember I said that we have to be proud of everything in Judaism? There are many people who are not proud of these blessings, and they try to apologize for these blessings. I don't think we need to apologize for these blessings. I think we need to explain these blessings. The next blessing that we have is Shelo Asani Goy. Thank you, Hashem, for not making me a Gentile. Now, anyone who's going through the process of becoming Jewish appreciates the value of Judaism. This might be a difficult blessing to say for someone who is not yet Jewish. But the reality is that we're thanking God for not making us a non-Jew. And I want to share something important on these words. The word goy literally means a nation. It is used to refer to Gentiles because they are part of a different nation other than the Jews. In Judaism, a convert is not called a goy. In fact, in Judaism, a convert is called ger shenit gayer, a convert who converts. Now, you would think it would be more appropriate to say goy shenit gayer, a non-Jew who converts. But no, we say a convert who converts. If a person goes through a proper conversion, they were never considered a non-Jew because God implanted within them the soul of a convert, the soul of a Jew who it is their calling to become Jewish. So this doesn't refer to someone who's going through a conversion process. This is referring to someone who is living the life of a non-Jew. But it's important to understand, what are we thanking Hashem for? Well, what is the difference between a Jew and a person who is non-Jewish? Well, a person who is non-Jewish has 7 biblical commandments, and a Jew has 613 plus. So we're thanking Hashem for the fact that we have so many more mitzvot. So why don't we just say, thank you, Hashem, for making me a Jew? Well, that's because Hashem can't make us behave like a Jew. Hashem could make us be born not a Gentile. But being a Jew, and I don't mean being born a Jew because that's not something we can control, but being a person who is worthy of being called a Jew, well, that's something that we earn. That's not something we thank Hashem for. That's something that we need to do all on our own. Which brings us now to the next one. Shelo asani aved, who has not made me a slave. Thank you, Hashem, for not making me a slave. Why do we thank Hashem for not making us a slave? Because a slave has no control over his own life. So why don't we say, thank you, Hashem, for making me a master? Or thank you, Hashem, for making me a free person? Because again, only we can choose to be free and not be a slave. Hashem has put us in the situation that we are not slaves. But to be free, that depends on us. We have to behave like free people. And then we get to, it's my favorite to teach because it always brings such great discussions, but it's the most politically incorrect blessing in the Torah. I love it. You know me. What is the blessing? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam shelo asani isha. Women do not say this blessing. What does it mean? Thank you, Hashem, for not making me a woman. Come on. Terrible, right? But the Torah values women. The Torah puts women on a pedestal. We just finished saying that a woman doesn't need to wear a kippah because she has a higher spiritual level. So why are we saying thank you, Hashem, for not making me a woman? This is for a man to say. But why do we have in the Siddur? And yes, the Siddur is written from a man's perspective in this case because men have the requirement to pray in the synagogue. So the prayer service is geared more for men because they have that requirement. But it does say over here that males recite this blessing. Why are men saying, thank you, Hashem, for not making me a woman? Well, on a superficial level, it's the same reason for thank you, Hashem, for not making me a Gentile. Men have more mitzvot that are required of them than women, because women are exempt from many mitzvot. So on a superficial level, the men are saying, thank you for giving me more opportunities to do mitzvot. But there is a deeper reason. And first of all, it's important to say, it has to be said this way, because they can't say, thank you, Hashem, for making me a man. Because only you can choose to behave like a man. Otherwise, you're not. God doesn't make anybody behave like a man. You want to be a man, you be the man. That's a choice that everybody makes. But the reason is that men say this blessing is simply because every single person who is created by God is created with a purpose that only they can accomplish. And Hashem has created them in each one of us in the manner in which we can do our mission the best. So we come into this world and we have a mission, we have a purpose in the world. And Hashem creates us with the tools to be able to do that mission. It's up to us to put in the work to do the right thing. But Hashem creates each one of us exactly the way we're meant to be. So if Hashem created an individual as a man, that is because his mission in this world must be done in that way. So he is thanking Hashem for not making him like a woman, because if he was created like a woman, he would not be able to do his mission, because his mission is tailor-made for him. What is the blessing that women say? She'asani kirtzono. Very good. She'asani kirtzono. And that is the blessing that really encompasses everything. She'asani kirtzono literally means that he has created me according to his will. When we say this blessing, we're thanking Hashem for not making us like anybody else, because that's what makes us unique. So thank you, Hashem, for not giving me the tools to accomplish somebody else's mission, because I want to accomplish the mission that you have given me. If somebody is given a job and they have all of the resources to do their job properly, that is the biggest gift. It's so hard to be in a position where you have a job to do, but you don't feel that it fits you. And you don't feel that you have all the tools or the resources to do your job. It's the most frustrating feeling. Some people find themselves in that situation. But when Hashem gives us a job, we know that Hashem gives us all of the perfect outfits and tools and resources to be able to do it. So if it's a job that has to be done by a man, Hashem has created that person as a man with the ability to do the job in his life. If Hashem has given a woman this job, Hashem has created this person according to his will. And this allows each one of us, when we say this blessing, it allows us to be thankful for everything that we have and the way that we are. We should be thankful for the way we look. We should be thankful for the position that we're in. We should be thankful for our family, because these are the tools and the resources and the situations and the circumstances that God has put us in, which enable us to do our mission. Yes.
So isn't that a good idea to marry? Right? And I would say this, but in a position, let's say you're at work, and you're wondering what this position is. Why are you there?
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't it be thank you, Hashem, for Sheshani Kirisonot and whatever I'm doing? That proper, you know what I'm saying? Even if
That blessing applies in many areas of our life. Yes, 100%. In a job position or anything, that Hashem has created us the way he wants us to be. 100%. 100%.
Something's not right, we don't feel the best, but at the same time, we're proud to do what we're doing, whatever it is.
100%. That Hashem has created us exactly the way we're meant to be. And by the way, let me tell you that my husband, and I think a lot of men, whether it's during the times when I'm pregnant or after I give birth. He says, thank you, Hashem, for not making me a woman. Very often. Let's be real. We get why they say it. But it's harder to be a woman, 100%. I'm the first one to admit it. My husband sleeps a lot better than I do. It's a lot harder to be a woman. But with difficulty comes privilege. So we can look at it and we can say, yes, the men say, thank you, Hashem, for not making me a woman, because they have more mitzvot, that they have requirements to do. They have easier time physically than women. But we look at it and we can say, Hashem has given us a greater challenge in so many areas. But with that greater challenge comes greater privilege, because it means Hashem has more faith in us. It means that Hashem knows that we can handle so much more. And Hashem knows that we don't need as many physical mitzvot to connect to Him, because we're already so much more connected to Him. And when we look at it from that perspective, we can really and honestly thank Hashem for making us as women. And these blessings are so beautiful. And they're all so much a part of our everyday experiences. And the last blessing that we have, the last blessing on this list of blessings is Hama'avir Shena Me'enai Utenuma Me'afapai, which means who removes the sleep from my eyes and the slumber from my eyelids. We start our day. We just said so many blessings. And now we say, Hashem, thank you for removing the sleep from my eyes. Literally, when you go like this in the morning and you just wipe it all away, and then you realize you have mascara and it's running down your face. So you wipe it all away. I'm ready. I'm ready to start my day. The sleep and the slumber could be a physical sleep, or it could be when we're living life and we're just sleeping through. We're in a daze. We're just letting life pass us by. We want to thank Hashem for helping us remove the daze and the, just going through the motions of our life. So we can actually be awake. We can experience. And when we feel like that, then we can recognize all of these blessings, the blessings of being straightened out, the blessings of having vision and insight, the blessings of distinguishing between light and dark, the blessings of having the strength of the Torah, the blessings of everything that we just thanked God for. We're saying, thank you, Hashem, for making me awake, fully able to recognize all of that. So with that, we conclude the morning blessings. And I can tell you already now that the morning blessings, after we finish the blessings, there is more to the morning prayers that we say. We have the blessings of the Torah. We have the priestly blessings that we say in the morning. And then we move on to Hareini Mekabel. We have Matovu. We have Adon Olam, which we're going to get into more Bezrat Hashem next week. But these blessings, whether you say them every morning or not, if you don't say them every morning, make an effort to say them whenever you can. The easiest way to do it is if you don't have a siddur, print out the list of blessings, put it on your fridge, say it in the morning or at any point during the beginning of your day. But most importantly, let's think about these experiences, thank Hashem for these experiences, and notice the fact that we have so many blessings in our lives. So on that note, l'chaim to all of these blessings. If anybody has this siddur at home, keep it handy. A siddur is not the type of thing that you keep on a bookshelf for pretty. A siddur should be the thing that gets taken off your bookshelf most often. It should be in the most handy spot in the house. Keep a siddur handy, or if you just want to have the blessings or anything like that. If anybody wants a printout of just the blessings in Hebrew and English with the transliteration, let me know. I will try to get one for you that you can print out. And Bezrat Hashem, we will be able to bring these blessings into our lives, into our day, and elevate our morning with that. So l'chaim to that. If anyone has any questions or any comments or anything you want to say, I just want to point out that depending on the nusach, the community that the Siddur comes from, whether it's Ashkenaz, Sephardic, the blessings are the same, but you might notice they're in a different order. So if you notice blessings in different order, depending on the Siddur, the blessings are not all in the same order. The order is important, and it's good to follow whatever your community has, but the blessings themselves are all the same, even if they're in a different order. How many are there? Let me check. Gonna count quickly because I don't have that number on the top of my head. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Nice round number. 15 blessings. There we go. Any questions, please unmute yourself. If you want to share anything, those of you on Zoom, please do. Anybody